So thank you for joining us. Again, my name is Patrick O'Halloran. I'm with WhereScape. I'm here with Dan Linstedt and several of our WhereScape customers that have been going through the Data Vault experience. I've been looking forward to this. I think this is going to be an exciting webinar as people talk about what they've built and how they got to where they are. I'm going to quickly introduce Dan and the 6 attendees. I'm going to do a quick introduction of who WhereScape is, maybe take a minute or two just to explain who we are, what we do. And then we'll have the roundtable discussion. I've got a list of questions. They're going to be sort of a framework for a discussion. But again, the discussion is mostly about what have people built, why did they choose Data Vault, and what adventures that they have along the way. We'll have a product demonstration. We'll see how WhereScape. Dan always talks about how automation is key to any Data Vault implementation. I think the two things he mentions the most are the upfront design and the importance of building a good raw vault. And the second thing he always mentions is automation for actually implementing that vault. And WhereScape can definitely help in the automation of both of those. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So introductions, we've got Dan Linstedt, founder of Data Vault Alliance. He's been on several webinars with us. He is, I don't know what to say. He's been working with Data Vault, designing it, building it, promoting it for a very, very long time. He's definitely a thought leader, industry leader in terms of not just Data Vault, but large data projects. With us, we've got several speakers from a couple different WhereScape customers, Matthew Bauer from Capital Blue Cross, Brian Harney, also from Capital Blue Cross, Andrea Huik from Nederlandse Spoorwegen, Joris Wiebrechts from Eindhoven, Kevin Marshbank from Data Vault Shop, and Max Ruzen from NIBC Bank. So what I'm going to do is to just, like I said, do a quick introduction of who WhereScape is, and then we get to the fun part. So WhereScape as a company has been around about 20 years. We started as a consulting company building data warehouses. We realized there were a lot of repetitive tasks, a lot of rewriting and redoing things that have been done before. And so we developed some tools for automating that. And those tools became very, very popular. We had some of our customers ask if they could buy those tools. And when that started happening, WhereScape stopped being a consulting company and began as a software company. So we've got 1,200 customers around the world. We're not tied to any particular industry. We've got everything you can imagine, from manufacturing to government to academia, NGOs, every nonprofits, whatever you can think of. We've got customers somewhere around the world in that space. And the big thing we do is automation. We remove a lot of the repetitive tasks, a lot of the hands-on tasks, and that really speeds up developer output. So what is data automation? I've referred to it sometimes as data warehouse automation. Warehouse is maybe a little bit of an older term for it, but whether it's a data warehouse, a data lake, a data vault, data lakehouse, data mart, whatever it is, a large data project, automation definitely is a key to helping build a better product successfully. So a couple factors about cost: obviously getting things done faster, reducing labor costs, reducing rework, reducing testing, all those are good. Risk, Gartner has said in several times that one of the largest, riskiest projects an IT department can undertake is developing a data warehouse. A lot of times, IT department will go and gather requirements, go back into their cubby holes and work for 6 or 9 or 12 months and develop something and throw it over the wall, and whatever they've developed is not what the business really wants. Those are risks that can certainly be mitigated with automation. Complexity, whether it's new design methodologies, new sources, new targets. Databricks is out now. Snowflake was relatively new. New web sources, whether they're web APIs, JSON files, all those new things can make things more complex. Just the vast amount of data needing to integrate new data sources. Urgency, we certainly saw how COVID can change the requirements for what the business needs very quickly, and a good IT department, a good data engineering group will respond to that. And then agility, that's one of the key things about automation, is I can, using WhereScape, develop prototypes very, very fast, sit down with the data analyst, sit down with the business, work with them directly, and coming up with presentations that they can use directly with their own tools, whether it's Yellowfin, Tableau, Power BI, whatever it is, and I can make those changes directly in front of them. That's the key point of agile development. So I'm going to turn this over to Dan. The general discussion we're going to have is focused around these questions. Why did you choose Data Vault? What did you build? How's it used? What lessons did you learn? Dan did a webinar for us last spring, talking about the key pillars of Data Vault: auditability, scalability, adaptability, and working closer with the business. Those are all key aspects of Data Vault. Since we're sponsoring this, we get to pick the questions. Why do you pick WhereScape? What expected and unexpected benefits do you have from WhereScape? Again, I'm hoping this is just a free-form, casual conversation. There is a Q&A button at the bottom. If you do have questions, feel free to type those in. If they're appropriate, I'll bring them up at the time. Otherwise, there's a Q&A session at the end. And with that, I will turn that over to Dan. Dan?
Excellent. Thank you. So I'd like to start out by asking Brian Harney, why did you choose the Data Vault methodology?
Yeah, so in my previous companies, we adopted the Kimball method, the star schema dimensions. And it first started out, it starts okay when you have a small set of data, but we found as we started adding more data sets, that it became increasingly difficult to figure out where do we put these things? What field is a dimension? What field goes on a fact? And it got to a point that people ended up just attaching these almost file-like formats as dimensions. So that the data was all open. At some point, that star schema model broke down. I mean, our medical service fact table had over 50 plus dimensions on it because of all the different data sets we had to put on it. And in our membership stuff, we also had okay, what if a member comes in with multiple records that we have to put in? So in a star schema, you create bridge tables to create multiples. Then we had bridge tables all over the place. And a lot of those bridge tables had 0 keys because not every member had a record. So it just became a huge mess and it got out of control, hard to query and that kind of thing. So when it came to Capital Blue Cross, I decided I didn't want to go that direction. I was trying to find something different. So I started looking at the internet, trying to figure out what kind of models do I have, what kind of models are out there. And I discovered this thing called Data Vault. I said, interesting name for that, Data Vault. And I started reading about it and reading about Dan and the methodologies and how it works, and where you can, with the hubs, links and satellites, you can basically take any kind of data set, just as long as you have a business key, you can hash that key and just attach it. I said, well, that solves that major problem we had right there. So that was one of the major things, saying that it loads data fast, it's easy to manipulate data. You have the links between them, link the data together and that kind of thing. So at that point, I said, we were starting from scratch. I wanted to try to adapt that technology into the new system. So I convinced our company to do that, and they let me do it. And now we've had Data Vault this was in 2020. I started that, so we've had Data Vault for like three years now. So that's basically how it came in, just sort of building a better mousetrap, if you will, from the previous way we do things. So it's been a lot better.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So moving on, Matthew Bauer, why have you built the Data Vault for your company and how is it used?
Sure. We're in the industry of health insurance, so we do a lot of health clinical analysis and financial analysis. And as the data warehouse group, we have to touch every single data domain in the business. So we, as Brian said, with adopting Data Vault, it was a very rigid structure to bring stuff in and store it. We could engineer very quickly while the business would sit there and think of exactly how they want their data displayed, and then they change their mind 5 times over. It's no big deal because we could keep everything virtualized on top of the vault, blow it up, no worries, and do it again. So that's what we really use it for. Our engineers are in there expanding the vault with our corporate data sources. As we have projects in the pipeline, we do virtual star schemas on top of it for testing with the business, and then we'll physicalize those structures so we get performance and all the beautiful benefits of the cloud platforms that we're on. In our vault today, we have 34 production hubs and several on the way. And of course, as you crawl from those hubs, there's dozens upon hundreds of satellites and stuff like that. But it's really been a useful tool for us. One of the cool things that we're excited to continue using, and we're still getting a little bit into it, are the point in time querying. We have a lot of times for especially our membership data where the business wants to understand why we reported something on a certain day, that it's different now. Well, now we have the change data capture, which is implicit in the Data Vault model, that we can go and tell you why we reported that on such a day. So a lot of cool stuff there.
That's really cool. Thank you very much. Brian, back to you. What lessons did you learn along the way?
Well, when you look at data, it's a little intimidating at first with the hub links and satellites because we're not used to that kind of thing. But I found out once you start understand the model, it actually is pretty simple. It's just intimidating when you see hash keys and things, and so building that, like I said, building that was a lot easier. We could easily take any kind of data set that they gave us, and we to be able to say we have this data into a data warehouse. But the star schema is kind of like, well, that's going to take us 3 or 4 months because we have to figure the exact dimension. This way, we can pretty much load the data up as is, the data set, attach it to a hub, and it's there. And we can claim that, okay, that data's there. We have it available in the data warehouse. And that's been a big factor for us, and that we be able to say that we can get data in there, with a pretty short time span for people to access that. So that's pretty much the one of the best features about it is that quick and easy loading of data and to be able to use it right away.
So before I move on, is there one piece of advice that you would give to the listeners today based on your lessons learned?
Lessons learned. I think you just have to kind of, well, first of all, I'd probably go get certified. I did finally get certified about a year later. It really makes sense to go and get certified in data vault because it helps you understand the methodology. It helps you understand the whole idea behind hub links and satellites. Once you get through a class like that, you understand, oh, this is why this is going this way. This is why things are easier and things. I think so that's the important thing is, matter of fact, in our company, we're requiring anybody who's going to be working on the data vault piece of that to be certified in one of your classes, because that's an important thing, because it's kind of intimidating, like I said, if you don't really have the class, but it's a lot easier if you have the class. You can finally figure out, say, oh, now I understand what's going on. So I think that's the most important thing, really, is to get certified.
Awesome. Thanks. So Matthew, how has this helped with your auditability, scalability, adaptability, and of course, working closer with the business?
Well, first I'll add a lesson learned on that, and it's to stick to the by the book on the vault. Don't stray from it. If you do, you're going to have
Right.
cascade issues that you wouldn't think you would, and so stick to the by the book. But for auditability, I had already mentioned the change data capture. That's happening for everything that you put in the vault. It's implicit. So that's just been a remarkable thing for us from the auditability perspective. And as Brian said, it's a very quick pipeline for bringing in data. So we've been able to scale out rapidly with all of our data sets without a problem, especially with the underlying cloud databases we've been using. It really helps along with storing and the vault table data beneath it makes it even faster for getting out of the vault. So
Awesome.
and with the business, we've definitely had to start working closer with our technical business analysts, because we need to make sure we understand the true the business key. It's not always evident on stuff, and as you're working through databases and things like that, and if you get that wrong, you got it all wrong. So it cascades up.
Cool. So before I continue with the last two questions, anyone else here on this call wish to contribute a few points or something that rung a bell with you while we were going through this? And that's to the panelists, of course. Go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah. Maybe I can add to this that we chose Data Vault after considering other models like Kimball and 3NF, which was the current model they used when we started to move to the cloud. So we completely changed everything. So we also chose for Data Vault because we wanted an agile approach, having many teams working on a big data warehouse, and that's perfectly fits Data Vault. And plus, we wanted to be able to have a lot of transactions, millions of records connected, and that's perfect with Data Vault. You can manage that. Plus, what we also do is we have, you can have, of course, calculated satellites, but we also use machine learning to actually calculate satellites. So that's something happening outside the vault, but then you put it back and you connect it to a hub. And that's really, really nice feature of Data Vault, that it gives you so much flexibility.
Very nice. Anyone else have anything to add? Any lessons learned? Kevin, I'm sure you've seen some things. You have anything there?
Yeah, I think one of the other things along the way too is that to continue to market what you're building to your executive team so they know what's happening. What I see a lot of times, people put their heads down and they start working and they're not sharing what they're doing, what they've produced. And that's one of the advantages of using WhereScape as well, is that you can produce the documentation with a few clicks. It's not you don't need a technical writer team building this arduous set of documentation with meetings. And I've done that in the past as a consultant and various data warehouse architect roles, just arduous meetings of technical documentation. And the tool does it for you, and you can produce it and hand it off to the executives and show each iteration. What have we done? What are we producing? And it keeps that close communication so they know what's being produced, why it's being produced, what your goal is in doing that. And, just teams need to not put their heads down and go dark. I've seen entire projects canceled because executives didn't know what was going on, and they felt like no progress was being made, even though a ton of progress had been made. And it's just lack of communication and visibility, and having an automation tool that provides you that documentation that you can just produce. There's really no excuse for it. You can, few clicks, produce it and show that whole lineage and all the work that's been done to provide that unified enterprise integration data vault for the entire organization to build off of. And also, sometimes there is a political battle there. Over time, I've had to go through that as well with Data Vault to be able to show over and over again that the data coming out of this is accurate. And over time, the executives will stop allowing people to provide data from anything other than what you're producing, because you're always producing the correct data. So a lot of other things I can say, but I don't want to wax poetic too long on all of this.
Yeah, thanks. So that's a perfect segue. Brings us right back to Brian. Why did you guys choose WhereScape?
So once we decided to go with Data Vault, I said I didn't have time. We didn't have time to get certified because we had incorporated Snowflake as our project, and Snowflake it was 6 months in the making before I started. So we were already 6 months behind, and there was sort of a lot of pressure to get something out there, quote unquote. So once I chose Data Vault, I didn't really have time to wait for classical class. So I started looking for ETL tools. I looked at a bunch. I didn't want a programming tool because then you have to worry about Java servers and maintaining those and that kind of thing. And the previous company I was at, we had something called Synopsys or Oracle Data Integrator, which was turned into Oracle Data Integrator, which was a SQL-based GUI tool where you don't have a middleware. It's basically a metadata tool where it writes SQL code in real time and then runs it against the target. And so I wanted something similar to that. So I was looking for that, and I found this thing called WhereScape, and there was a couple other ones. But the biggest thing that brought me in with WhereScape was the Data Vault Express component that it had, because I figured, okay, I haven't been certified, but if I have this Data Vault Express, I know that this tool will help me build that stuff. I don't really have to be an expert on it yet. I can get something out there for us, and using the 3D product as well, I can model the Data Vault. It'll model the Data Vault for me because it'll do it for me, and then it'll help me build out those tools or programs that I need to build that. So that was one of the main features. And then, of course, the documentation was another one, because no one likes to write documentation, but people ask for it. So the idea was, okay, since WhereScape is a self-documenting tool, it's nice to be able to have this documented from start to finish. So when we put a dimension or fact out there, and someone says, where does this field come from? We can, through the impact analysis, we can go back from that field all the way back to the source, and where we get and say, this is the field on such and such source. So that's really nice. So that's another feature that was good for us. And of course, the data automation was a big tool too, is having just be able to put that in there with the templates, just sort of, you recompile it, and it's ready to go. So those are the kind of the three main features of why we chose WhereScape.
Wonderful. Thank you. So as a final question, to you two, both Brian and Matthew, and then we can open it up to the other panelists here as well. But what expected or unexpected benefits did you get from using WhereScape?
One of the things from an engineering and code review perspective is that the template-based functionality of WhereScape has really helped us just have higher faith and less need for review on certain things. More of just checking logic that's been put into the WhereScape tool itself, right? And because of that, it has really standardized a lot of our coding practices, which has, pros and cons, but we certainly find areas for our developers to express their coding creativity in other projects. And we also make sure that not all of our developers are full-time in Data Vault. We let them sprinkle in presentation layer, and stuff like that too. And then one of the really nice things from WhereScape also is the granularity of package deployment. I've never seen a tool with package deployments like this. Everything I've ever done in the past, I've had to hand a stack of SQL scripts to a DBA and hope, the coding I put in is 100% correct. Well, now, the package is just, a bunch of, the appropriate design files or whatnot. And I have the user interface to say, I'm going to replace these types of tables. I'm going to alter these ones or, whatever. I don't have to worry about developing all the SQL myself for it. So that really blew me away, frankly.
Awesome. Brian, anything to add to that?
No, I think what Matthew's saying has made it easier for that whole process. Is just being able to go from start to finish and setting up what they have this thing with you, the load stage, the data vault schemas, and then to the ETL. It made it a lot easier to go from these first step to the second step to the third step, and then finally the presentation layer. It made it a lot easier process. And then like the deployment thing, it made everything just seemed to be a lot easier. And I've been in this business for like over 30 years and write a lot of code, and writing code can be mundane. So to have a tool that rates the code for me is a nice thing, and I don't have to worry about writing code and repeating that code over and over again. So those are the two good things for me as well, from an old time coder, if you will.
Sweet. Anyone else on the panel before I close this out with a comment and then pass it back over?
Yeah, I jumping on what Brian said there. That's one thing I really try to harp on people, is that the tool is doing the meat and potatoes of the work of a warehouse for you, the coding, the stuff that's repetitive, and it allows everybody to focus on the real business value, which is identifying the business keys and the relationships, the unit of work, etc. That's where the real business value is. And if you can take your team's time and have it focus on that and have the conversations with the business instead of writing a whole bunch of code. But the code's the same. It's always the same. And sure, there's some idiosyncrasies here and there, but having your team focus on what the business needs are, and not kicking that can down the road for the people that are trying to write reports in the end, is where their true value comes in.
Cool. Thank you. So I would recommend to everybody on the call that you use version control as part of your governance for the templates. For the templates themselves, that's extremely important, and that those templates are then governed by a global team. And if you don't have a team, at least a full-time individual who manages nothing but the templates. That's extremely important, that everyone globally follows the same production standards, uses the same templates, and that you have a common library of templates across the board. The second recommendation you already heard is to assign a full-time individual on your team. And if you have a small team of 2 or 3 people, then you probably don't need a full-time individual, but at least a part-time task or role for just monitoring and understanding the templates. And the third thing I'll pass along to everybody, and this is more for WhereScape, I'd love to see an AI generation for the template engine, as well as for some of the SQL improvements, if you can hook it into the AI. Now, that doesn't mean that AI always generates the right code or the right templates or whatever, but it might help in terms of acceleration or what we call agility of the templates themselves, or template development in that particular area. So just a thought. Okay, so I'm going to pass it back over to Patrick. That's the end of the question list here, and we'll continue.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. I'll just mention that we did kind of play around with ChatGPT when it first became popular a month or 2 ago. And it was very surprising that we could get, ChatGPT, you get out what you put into it. The better you define your question, the better response you're going to get. Which I guess is true of Data Vault and all data projects.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I
but-
like to say ChatGPT doesn't make me smarter; it makes me faster, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
But we
still have
did
to bring
ask
the
it to write
knowledge.
some Python templates for us. And it was surprising that we could give it general descriptions of, we need Python templates that, here's examples of our current Python template. We need to adapt this to bring in a different source system or to do conversions or to add some extra functionality. And we got some pretty surprising results with it. As with everything else that comes out of ChatGPT, you would never take it at face value. It's a great start. It's a great template. It's well worth reviewing after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything that comes out needs to be vetted for sure. There's no question. But if you push in the right questions, you can get close to the right answer, and the agility is phenomenal. At least for me, and I've just so everyone knows, I've got 30 plus years of coding experience behind me, so I know what kind of question I need to ask, right? And it's as with any AI or large language model, the more specific the question, the more exact and precise the answer. So just something to keep in mind.
A good use
Right,
for this in combination with WhereScape is what we did was ask ChatGPT to write the API code to extract data from a source. So even that part, like writing an API to make specific extracts from your source, was sped up tremendously. And after that, you have the data and you can just run it through, which makes onboarding of new data even faster.
So just to follow on to that, one of the integration points I could see being worked into the GUI of WhereScape is a ChatGPT interface box where you ask your question and it goes to the API and then parses the answer, and you tell it, push this into the template library with these mods, right? So something simple like that is a great starting point.
We are actually looking at that. There's a lot of good development in R&D that's being done, and AI, as much as it is a buzzword, has a place in the future. My analogy with AI and ChatGPT and its ability to do work is that it's kind of where Wikipedia was when it first started. Wikipedia, when it first started, was people were using it as a primary source, which it wasn't quite ready for. But nowadays, Wikipedia has matured. Its use has matured, and now you can pretty much use it as a primary source. I think AI is at that point right now where it can give you hints, give you directions, but it's not quite a primary source. All right, I'm going to thank our panelists. If any of you have, I did tell them that one of the benefits of volunteering for this was they could ask Dan any questions. So Dan's not ready for this, but if any of our panelists have any general questions, any points they want to bring up, as I said, we've got a nice audience here. If you think there's something you want to bring up that would be helpful for someone who's just starting down the path of Data Vault, or since you've got the expert, anything you want to learn about Data Vault philosophy or implementation or modeling, any of the panelists, if you have that, feel free to speak up.
Well, I started out some years ago designing and developing Data Vault, and then it was presented as the new business supermodel. I've got, I believe, one of the first print-on-demand copies of the Data Vault manual, and there has been a lot of development of Data Vault and also a lot of opinions. What is your opinion of the place of the business within Data Vault architecture, Dan?
The business within the Data Vault architecture is actually put together or defined within the Data Vault 2.1 components. And in Data Vault 2.1, we talk about people, process, and technology. We talk about Data Vault as more than just a data model, which it really is. It's a solution for business intelligence. So when you incorporate those aspects of it, especially with the people, process, and technology components, we span out and bring in things like discipline agile delivery, which bring in all the stuff with agile and integration, collaboration, team management. And then, of course, we span out now and we bring in data mesh and product owners and so on. So the business plays a big role in not only sponsoring, but in agility, in collaboration, in communication, and in identifying specific components that are to be used. Excuse me for a moment. So that's sort of what our take on that. And the perception in the industry is what is incorrect. The perception, many people have the perception that Data Vault is just a data model, and that is completely wrong. Data Vault is so much more. It's got architecture, it's got methodology, it's got implementation. And when I say architecture, everyone thinks of systems architecture. Well, that's just one piece. There's data architecture, process architecture, there's people architecture, in other words, roles and responsibilities, how agile gets done, and so on and so forth. And in the methodology, there's a whole slew of things, from TQM to Six Sigma to CMMI, the best of breed pulled into the works. And then when I say implementation, everybody thinks about SQL and data movement, and they forget that implementation also includes process, and that's people process. How do you escalate when something goes wrong, and how do you handle all of those concerns? And so that's why Data Vault is more than just a data model. So hopefully that helps clarify some of your question.
Yeah, sure.
Any other quick questions for Dan from our panelists? If not,
we've got a couple on the chat.
Yeah, I'm going to get to those later. We've got about 8 questions open in the chat. I've been answering a bunch already as we've been going through. But at this point, we'll have Brian do a demo of WhereScape. So we've talked about Data Vault, we've talked about data model, talked about things like that. I will let Brian take over, start screen sharing. And
Patrick, I cannot share my screen right now. You need to give me authority for that.
Okay. Try that.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay, that looks good.
Okay. Well, this has been a wonderful discussion about Data Vault, and I appreciate all the panelists and Dan coming in and doing this. So I'm just going to spend just a couple of minutes going over WhereScape just real quickly, since it was mentioned several times. So WhereScape is actually comprised of 2 different tools. When you're talking about Data Vault Express, which is what some people have talked about, it's made up of WhereScape Red, which creates the physical tables for us, and WhereScape and the code and all of that, and WhereScape 3D, which is how you take a model-driven approach. And so Data Vault Express includes both those products with all of the templates, as been mentioned several times, to allow you to create Data Vault objects. So now this is just a quick overview of how WhereScape Red, how your data would flow once you create the physical objects. So we start over here on the left-hand side with your data sources. As was mentioned also about APIs, we have a file parser. You can grab it from flat files, and of course databases, DBMSs. So that's over here on the right side, on the left side. On the right hand side, this is your data visualization tools, your Yellowfin, your Looker, your Tableau, your Power BI. WhereScape doesn't do anything in that realm. Instead, what it does is that heavy lifting between these 2 layers. So we start with extraction of the source. We take that data, we land it into your target platform, making a one-to-one copy. Now, this could be Snowflake, Redshift, Databricks, or a traditional database platform like Oracle, SQL Server, Teradata. And we make a one-to-one copy. We call this our load layer. Then we start doing transformations. So these are that first level transformations where you're doing data type mappings, you're adding your hash keys, that sort of stuff. Then once that's ready, you have your data prepared, then we land it into a data foundation layer. Now for Data Vault, this is your Data Vault layer, your raw vault layer. And then you start doing your hard transformations, your business transformations, and you can build out your star schema on top of this and your business vault, all using WhereScape. Now we do this with metadata, and This is one of the secrets of WhereScape. That's how we're able to generate the code. You're able to do things like impact analysis and track back diagrams and stuff, all because of our metadata. And because of that, we also have this self-documenting feature. You just push a button and it generates that technical documentation on how the data warehouse is put together. We also include a pipeline tool, and this is what we call our scheduler. And so that's WhereScape Red and how it works. Now, the other tool is WhereScape 3D. And this is really what I want to show you, because this is where the magic happens with Data Vault. You take a model-driven approach. So with WhereScape Red, it's a bottom up. You create those load tables, stage tables, raw vault, all of that. With WhereScape 3D, we actually start with a Data Vault design. So we can create a design in our Data Vault. So I can come in here and I can create I can create entities and add attributes to this. And so I created this simple model, and then I map it back to sources. So WhereScape has the ability to discover your sources. So after you have a basic diagram that you're looking at, we can take this Data Vault and decide that we like it and we want to create a raw vault from it. And the way this works is you can come in and take your attributes and say, this is my business key, and this is a medium volatility satellite. And you can split these up and do different things with it. And then you can generate a raw vault with a click of a button. So what happens is we use what we call model conversion rules to do this. So we have all the attributes marked, and then we can create a raw vault. And we do this because WhereScape understands Data Vault. It understands satellites. It understands what hash keys are. Now, these are steps that you would normally do. We're just doing them quickly inside the tool through automation. These are things that you would manually do. This may take days or weeks or something to go and create your raw vault and build it out. Now, what the nice thing is WhereScape will give you a quick raw vault design. With the yellow, the yellow are satellites, the blue are hubs, and the pink are links, so that you can look in here and say, oh, this is a good raw vault or not. You can come in and I can make a quick copy and make a change. Maybe I decided to add a few more objects to it, and I can then create another raw vault. So this is how we mesh in with the agileness, the ability to quickly go through your model. And then what happens is you can then find your sources, and we can connect to a source and discover that. So after you have designed your model, maybe, or part of the process, maybe you actually want to go in and check out your sources. So we have the ability to do this with flat files, APIs, and in this case, I'm just going to a SQL Server table. And so we discover it. Now we can do a full discovery, which includes referential integrity constraints, and then we can also profile that data. So if you are not sure what your data looks like and how it would fit into your Data Vault model, we can do this full profiling. And so we end up with a nice ERD here, and it is a modeling tool, so I can draw my own relationships if I want to. We have the ability to use rules to determine those relationships. And then, of course, we can come in here and I can look at that profile. So I can look at those results maybe in a graph and say, oh, this is my average character counts and distinct values and null percentages, and all of that stuff is available to then help you decide, what track you want to take with your Data Vault model. So now This is also automation. So if we looked at this model that we built and we got to this raw vault, maybe going back and forth between the data vault design and the raw vault and going back and forth until we figure out this is what we want. Now, these are set up so that if we look at company, I can look at my source mappings and say, oh, well, this I have mapped back to my customer. So you'll notice that this is company. That's what we decided it was, but we're going to pull it from this customer table that's our source. So you sit there and you map these different things in this, but this is a top-down approach. We have not built those load and stage tables in WhereScape Red that are here that you would do manually. So what we're going to do is we're going to use automation to create these. I can click a button and create those, and they end up with this model right here. So we would run through a different set of model conversion rules that includes the load tables, the stage tables for all of these. And if we go back to that one of those hubs that we were looking at, we can see that now the source comes from our stage table, and we can even look at the mapping the source back in the tool to see it came from a database, it went into a load table, into a stage table, and into this. And this is all done with a couple of clicks inside WhereScape. We can also do the same thing and build out a business vault with a couple of clicks, running through those same model conversion rules. And by business vault, I mean we create a view for your satellites automatically that is a current view and a history view of it. And then we also have the ability with a couple of clicks to create a bridge table and a pit table. So I can create a bridge table. Well, we only have one link in this one, but that's how you would do it. We can create those. And then once everything is ready, we can deploy this to WhereScape Red. So if you'll notice here, it says TGT. This is a logical model. We don't know whether we're deploying this to Snowflake, to SQL Server, Redshift, Databricks. So the next step would be to create a deployment, and then we would get this ready. Now, you can also then combine this and build out your star schema. So I can take and say, I need a fact table and I need a dimension. And so you can do this inside the tool. And then in WhereScape Red, once we deploy this, you can see these objects. Here is our raw vault with our hubs, our links, and our satellites. We have written the code when we deploy it, and you can look and see here's the stage tables that are necessary to build it out. Then we deploy our business vault, and here is a bridge table that I created. Here are the views, those current and history views that sits on top of all of our satellites. And then if we deployed something like this fact table, we can see, or a dimension, I can see this dimension. And let's do an impact analysis. And where did this come from? We can now see that this dimension for customers came from our stage table, which came from joining our hub and our current view, and on top of this medium rate of change, it came. So you can track this all the way through inside the tool, and then build a job that runs in our scheduler. We have a new interface for that called Azkaban, so that you can look at, if we want to process this raw vault, to load just the raw vault, it loads all the pieces. We can look at schedules, what has been scheduled, what has run in the past, that we can load different things. So, and then finally, we have executors, so that you can execute the process close to, as close as possible to either your source or your target. You can have multiple executors. So that's my 15-cent WhereScape tour, just to give you an idea of WhereScape and what the power, what it can do, and what the interface looks like. So.
All right, thanks, Brian. Yeah, and that is just the proverbial tip of the iceberg. There is, as far as designing, developing, deploying, operating data vaults, data warehouses, WhereScape is the complete package. I'll have a slide up later. You can always go to wherescape.com. There's a contact us button there if you want more information. I've got a slide I'm going to put up. Dan mentioned certification. I believe he also mentioned the Data Vault Alliance. So let me see if I can share my screen one more time. And Dan, you mentioned Data Vault 2.1. Do you want to talk about Data Vault Alliance and Data Vault 2.1 and certifications?
Absolutely. So Data Vault Alliance, for those of you that don't know, is our company. It is the founding originators of all things Data Vault going forward. And if you haven't taken a look at our website, I encourage you to do so. The URL's at the bottom of the slide there. We also have a Learn site, an LMS site. It's free to become a member. And so datavaultalliance.com, we've got learn.datavaultalliance.com. And we, on that Learn site, we advertise a paid professional membership. And it's really cool. It gets you access every month, once a month, on a call with myself, Cindy Meyerson, our COO, and Sanjay Pandey, our CMO, who also has tremendous amount of Data Vault experience. And you get to ask us questions every month, once a month for an hour, along with the other professional members. And we go through a Q&A. We answer them point blank for you right there. So if you're stuck on something, the pro membership is a really easy and quote unquote cheap way to get our consulting hours from us on point questions. And so that's a really cool thing. We also have a quarterly webinar, which we go through a coaching. We choose a topic to coach on, and then we walk you through some specifics, and then we open it up for questions and answers at the end of that. And usually we'll coach for about 30 to 45 minutes. The last one we just did, Cindy presented bits and pieces about data mesh and Data Vault and talked about how those things fit together. And so it's really quite cool. We try to focus on what these things are and why you should pay attention to them. We also then get into some of the implementation details. So neat stuff. We do record each of these sessions. So if you join membership today, you're not going to miss out. Those recordings that we did the last 2 months, because we started about 2 months ago, are available to you on a professional membership. So you're going forward, you can always see the past history and view the videos past history on membership. Now, Data Vault 2.1, let's talk about that. That's a very fun topic here. It's right around the corner. We are announcing a Data Vault 2.1 shift in certification, in the materials and everything else. And what we're going to include in Data Vault 2.1 are topics like data lakes, data lake houses, data mesh. We're also going to talk about data fabric and data virtualization and how they work with Data Vault, as well as the medallion architecture, which people like to use as a buzzword today. We're going to share all of those things. We've advanced the architecture. We've advanced the options and the opportunities. We're including JSON satellites at the technical level. We're talking about additional components for pits and bridges, how they work in an advanced context, what to do with a gigantic persistent staging area, which may span into your data lake and may be your data lake. So we're integrating all kinds of things. I guess some of the other fun things that we're doing in Data Vault 2.1 include document processing and how to integrate that. It's an introductory level. Video processing, again, pre-processing, how to integrate that, why you would need it, what value it brings to analytics, image processing, audio processing. So we're addressing some of the more unstructured side of the house. And how do you ingest that data? How do you deal with it from a pre-processing perspective? And what do you do with it? How do you get it into the vault? How do you link it up with your existing structured and semi-structured world and make analytics from it or produce analytics from it? So some really cool things coming. On top of mind as well is performance addressing performance issues in some context of the word and addressing complexity. So one of the topics that we've been asked about for the last couple of years is temporality. So we're going to introduce a whole bunch of really cool things around temporal and how to think about temporal. And this is at an implementation level. So the temporality is going to come at you with a how-to from an implementation side of the house, including standards and best practices and recommendations and so on. We're also going to focus on effectivity satellites and how to do those better. There's a lot of misunderstandings around that, including the same as and the links and hierarchical links. And along with the temporality, I can't fail to mention that we're going to address late arriving data from an implementation standpoint. And we'll talk about audit trails and how to ingest them and what to do when backdated data arrives and how do deltas work and what the question of a delta really is. And, so there's a lot that's maturing in the sections from implementation all the way through architecture and methodology. Now, I've got one more thing to announce there with 2.1, two more things, if I may. The first is that we're doing a class that starts on Monday. And if you want access to the sales page, it's $14.97 and you must be certified. So if you're CDVP 2.0 certified, then you can enroll in this course and you can get it for half the price that we're going to put it out in production. Now, this is a beta class. This is a working class where I'm going to be going through sections and asking you for feedback. So there's a bit about that. And we may not make it through all the course materials. That's the other part of it. But you're going to get a feel for what the new materials are. You're going to see and get to interact with me directly. And then if you miss this course in December and you'd rather take it in January, we have another set of dates in January where we will be offering it again in a beta level in January and for a 5-day sprint or 5-day type of course. And you'll be able to provide your feedback from the student experience all the way through quizzing, all the way through exams and question preparation and topic levels and understanding and all that. So that's coming in 2.1, and then we'll finally release the class. The other thing I want to say is when we do put the full class out and make it available, you will be able to enroll for free. If you've been in one of these beta classes, you'll be able to enroll for free to take the full course complete from start to finish. And you will also be eligible to take the 2.1 certification and get recertified. Now, for those that don't want to enroll in the beta course, this is the last piece. Those that don't want to enroll in the beta course, but yet are interested in 2.1, we are going to push the class out and we're going to ask that the authorized training partners offer it at 50%, which will be the $14.97 price, and that's in US dollars, to make it available to you if you can prove that you are certified. And all you need to do is bring your accredible certification link and show that, and you're good to go. So we cannot force the ATPs to offer 50%. That's price fixing. It's illegal across country against country law. But we can suggest that that is the pricing that they offer. We at DVA will probably run one course and we will honor that pricing at 50% off so you can get recertified, and that's going forward. So don't stress too much if you can't make it into the beta course. The difference is that I probably won't be teaching the full course because I've got other things to do after that. So hopefully that's a rundown for you. And the membership area is really, really cool. It gets you a whole bunch of other things. We've had new stuff planned for the professional membership as well. So definitely get on board.
And thank you, Dan. It did come up earlier. One of the things Brian mentioned about lessons learned, I think it was Brian, said certification is key. And having been through the certification course, I've got the big book right here. It absolutely helps. So if you're new to Data Vault, if you're seriously considering implementing it, certification is a must. Just to learn terminology, everyone on your team will have common ideas of concepts and terminology and things like that. It's a big, big plus. I'll also mention automation. Again, whether it's WhereScape or anything else, I cringe when people talk about building a data vault by hand. The amount of work that it takes that can be automated is huge. You can see great savings and have a much better product. And for those of you in North America, I'll mention there's also the Data Vault North American user group. They meet quarterly, had a meeting yesterday. They've got a good site with recordings and things like that. So if you're in North America, I don't think they would throw you out if you were in Europe and tried to join. But you can check out the Data Vault North American user group. We have about 8 questions left in the window. I've been going through. We've got great participation. Thank you. If you have any more questions, feel free to add them. We may not get to them all. If we don't, what I will do is make sure we get answers to specific people. I believe we've got names attached to all the questions, or most of them. So I'll be sure and get answers to these. Dan, a question came up. I don't know if you can see the questions about trying to, okay, the first one about building from data vault from NoSQL databases. Any comments about that?
Well, let me read the question here. Right. What makes sense to use with NoSQL DBs? Well, the answer is it depends. There's a lot of different kinds of NoSQL database out there. And in all honesty, NoSQL is a misnomer. It really means not only SQL, because even the graph databases have implemented a form of SQL that allows you to get at the data set. So NoSQL doesn't really play a role. But in terms of NoSQL, we have people who have built data vaults on a graph database and have been successful. But that's understanding the graph database and how the technology works. Now, I'm going to give you guys a fundamental thought here, an axiom, if you will, that is required to be thought about. And that is that the physical model, the physical data vault model, will not always match the logical model. And the reason why is because the physical model can and should be adapted to meet the needs of the platform. And in this particular case, if you're talking about a graph database, the platform is different. The way they execute data sets are different. The way they organize data sets are different. I'll give you a more concrete example. If you're talking about Cassandra or MongoDB, those are complete different storage mechanisms. And in Cassandra and MongoDB, we've had to flatten data vault objects. So if you take a hub and its surrounding satellites and flatten it, for example, and that means denormalize for those of you in the data modeling space. If you take a link and their surrounding satellites and denormalize it, this happens at the physical level, not at the logical level, but at the physical level. This is how you get performance off of Cassandra and MongoDB, is by flattening these structures. So much the same as the structure would change on Cassandra or MongoDB, the structure at the physical level probably will change depending on the NoSQL environment that you're applying the data vault to. And so that's important to think about. Otherwise, the NoSQL environment probably won't work for you. And that's, the same goes with BigQuery. If you're dealing with BigQuery, you probably want to do some flattening of some of the data vault objects to get better performance out of it. And that does not mean throwing out the data vault standards. It does not mean breaking the standards. It does not mean avoiding the build of the data vault model itself. But that hopefully answers that question.
All right, let's copy and answer. We're down to about 3 questions. I tell you what, we're at the top of the hour. So whatever questions I didn't get to, I will respond to directly from emails. And for Max and Andrea and Matthew and Brian and Joris and Dan and Kevin and Brian, thank you all very much for joining us. I appreciated the insights. I appreciated the knowledge. We had great participation, which is always a good sign. So thank you all very much. If any of you have any questions, you can reach us at WhereScape.com. You can go to WhereScape.com and hit contact us. You can email us at info@WhereScape.com. And if you do want to see a demo, as I said, what Brian showed off was just the tip of the iceberg. I hope you learned some of the great stories, great benefits that some of our real customers have gotten from real world implementations of Data Vault. So again, thank you all very much. I appreciate your time, appreciate your attention. I'll get a recording out to everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick, I'll stick around and
Okay.
I can help you answer some of the questions about the course and
Okay.
certification.
Sure. I'm just typing an answer to our practice test available for certifications, and my answer was, if I remember right, during the certification course, there are practice tests.
There have not been in the past.
Okay.
Going forward in 2.1, there will be. There will be quizzing online at the end of every video or lesson, and then there will be a practice exam available in the 2.1 area.
Okay.
So when you're done with that one, we can address some of the other ones here.
All right, let me start at the top then. Can this be implemented to National Statistics Office where SDMX is being implemented globally? I'm not sure what SDMX is.
I don't know, but I can do a quick search and try to find out.
Okay.
Let me just see what I can locate.
I can answer the thank yous. Those are nice. Always nice to get. Can we have a sample data vault model in real life complex enterprise solutions such as supply chain or so? Yeah, I can get him something.
Yeah. So SDMX, according to the Google, is statistical data and metadata exchange. Apparently it's a format and it's a file. It's an ISO standard designed to describe statistical data and metadata and normalize their exchange. So from that perspective, that would have to be a WhereScape deal. You would have to construct a WhereScape set of templates that export your data, your metadata, and your statistical data in SDMX format.
Okay, I'll check on that. The second one, for the virtual star schema built on top of Data Vault, how could we manage logics in the virtual layer, such as views due to continuous change? I can answer that one.
Yeah, that's a WhereScape thing.
Well, plus on top of that, the whole Data Vault model is insert only. So you don't change the raw vault, but you're free to change all the views and things on the whole star schema on top of that. So if you do need different granularity or something like that, you can completely wipe away, excuse me, the star schema and re-implement it however you need to, because you've still got the unaltered raw vault underneath it all.
Yeah, he's asking about the business logic specifically.
Okay.
So more into the point, he wants to know, where does he go in WhereScape to change the business logic that generates the view code?
Okay.
That's the way I read that question.
Okay, I'll read that one a little more carefully. The sample one, another thank you, appreciate that. Is it mandatory to attend live training sessions for certification, or are there self-paced courses?
There are no self-paced courses yet today. And of course, we still have a couple of people hanging out, which is fine.
Yeah.
But it is mandatory to attend the training session to apply for the certification exam. We do have plans far in the future. And when I say far, I mean 2 to 3 years out for some self-paced courses. However, that depends on the part of the world you're in. If we offer an in-person course or instructor-led course in your part of the world, we encourage you to go take it. If you're in some far-flung region of the world where we don't offer instructor-led courses, then talk to us. We can see what we can do, because we do get instructors that will do different time zones based on demand. So it's sort of a demand request cycle.
Mizan is asked earlier if they could get certified in Canada, and I said yes, but he says, sorry, I couldn't find any courses for certification where I can attend from Canada /remote.
There are no courses directly in Canada today. That is by request, and we are working on our partnership with a new company called 7 Rivers that just purchased Performance G2, which used to offer training in Canada. And if 7 Rivers signs the agreement in the new year to become our authorized training partner, then there may be courses directly in Canada again. In the meantime, contact us directly our partner Data Rebels here will definitely do an instructor-led based course on the Canadian time zone, but it will be remote over Zoom.
And then this last one I can answer. Can you load? We're getting more questions popping in. Can you load a link before a hub, or should the hub always be first? And I can tell you that one of the things about Data Vault is that it's scalable because you can add hubs and link the data and load hubs and satellites and links independently of order. The whole idea is you can do these things serially because of the way the hash keys are created.
Yep. You
can load a link and then the hub and satellite can follow later.
Yeah, and to add to that, that is the right answer. And to add to that, the architectural design states that everything can be parallel or made to run in parallel. However, the one caveat is if you implement referential integrity and you are on a database that enforces it, then you have a dependency to load the hubs first. But if you do not implement database referential integrity, you should still declare it, because even platforms like Snowflake will use the declared referential integrity as a performance optimization technique in the SQL query resolution. Now, that said, what that means is if you don't have referential integrity turned on, or you're on a platform that does not enforce it, it becomes your responsibility to make sure that the referential integrity processes are written after the fact. In other words, they're run on a timed basis rather than, so every 5 hours or every 24 hours or every 5 minutes, or depending on how frequently you're updating the structures. So you definitely want to make sure that your referential integrity is there in the data set, or your SQL code for your BI layers will start breaking, definitely.
Yeah, I'm gonna cut this off pretty soon, but someone asked if we realized we were actually still live, and I said, yeah, this is like the bonus feature on a CD for the people who stuck it out and are still listening. All right, Dan, I appreciate this very, very much. Thank you. It's always great to hear from you, and great to hear these insights from people who are actually using Data Vault, actually making it work, and actually solving a lot of business problems by adopting Data Vault. So for the rest of the attendees who hung around this long, thank you for your extra attention. Dan, thank you. We'll get a recording out. And with that, I will call it a day.
You bet. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.